What's up, everyone? I make a lot of videos talking smack about Mr. Michael Knowles, and you could be forgiven for thinking that I hate the guy or that I really dislike him, but no, actually, I generally agree with a lot of what he says. It's just sometimes he says things that are, not entirely true, so that's why I feel the need to correct him. But yeah, Michael Knowles went on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, and they came through to the Daily Wire studios and filmed their episode there. Yeah, towards the end of the interview, they had some interesting discourse, so let's get into it.
Because the girls are wrong. I mean, I pointed out when they were wrong plenty of times too. But Brian, well, he's probably more correct than them on some like basic things. Brian said he didn't want to get married. So you don't want to get married. That's gay. You know, I'm making this accusation a lot now.
Why do you keep using that term?
I'm like that guy.
That's a not very inclusive term. You know that.
It's very inclusive.
Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. The PC police. Like, my goodness, guys, calm down. He didn't even say the F word that YouTube doesn't want me to say. Faggot. Faggot. Faggot, 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 faggot.
There are a lot of gay guys.
Gay?
So I'm including them.
Why can't you just say you disagree?
Because I
think,
disagree,
like,
but specifically I disagree because that view is gay.
Right, but okay, but the problem that I have with calling something...
Why are you gay?
Why are you gay? You are gay.
Well,
you are gay. Like that guy on the Ghana.
I have a problem, I feel like, with, at least if I'm trying to understand your motive, like your desired outcome of going on these shows and speaking the truth or whatever, your truth, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's going to yield good benefit or desired results if you say things are gay in a derogatory way. Because it's not like someone maybe who's gay is going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, this guy, he thinks all gay people are bad. Or,
listen, I'm an icon of the gay community. You know, I have plenty of friends. Look, I lived in New York. I lived in LA. I went to the gayest university on
what university?
Earth, Yale.
Okay.
So they say 1 in 4, maybe more at Yale, you know, and I have a disproportionate number of homosexually identifying friends and people with variously eccentric views. But, my view is that we shouldn't recommend the, LGBT activism. I think that's not a good thing to recommend.
But it's not recommending that. It's just, like I said, if your desired result is to hopefully find a middle ground where you can both agree on something.
No, my desired result is to arrive at the truth. That's my desired result.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Nobody cares about your fifis or your thoughts or your feelings or whatever else. The truth is the only thing that is real. You know, reality is a binary logic-based system, and in a binary logic-based system, there is only true and there is false. There is nothing else. So, if reality is truth, then that means everything else is false. I'm sorry, but why is it's my responsibility to tiptoe and to walk on eggshells around your fifis? Oh, I'm sorry, your fifis got hurt because I use a word you know like. Boo-hoo, cry me a freaking river, man. And not only that, let's take his argument, his argument, and swap the word gay out for the word dumb. He said, I don't think it will yield good or desired benefits if you say things are dumb in a derogatory way, because a dumb person might hear it and be like, oh, he hates dumb people. You know, someone who's dumb enough might believe that, but I feel like a majority of people have enough brain cells that they can understand the difference, guys. This is not a complicated subject, and most children can grasp these concepts.
But don't you
Is it for yourself or to help other people arrive at the truth?
For everybody.
But if you're trying to help other people arrive at the truth, calling something gay in a bad way in front of another gay person, I'm not
I think
even
it's
saying
really good. I think it's really good to do because
I think people they recoil when you attack at
maybe you recoil. I don't think a lot of other people.
I think a lot of people.
I think a lot of people grew up on the playground saying, hey, that shirt's really gay, ha ha ha, and then everybody laughs. I think everybody used this kind of language until 5 minutes ago, and in no way is it mocking or attacking any people who have kind of eccentric sexual desires or anything like that. But I think it's just kind of gay.
But even if it alienates,
I think this whole conversation.
But imagine it alienates 1 or 2% of the audience. Is that worth it?
In this case, I'm using it in a very specific way. and intentionally, much as I would use the word eradicate at my CPAC speech with regard to transgender ideology.
So it's to
I'm
get
using it.
attention.
No. That's what the liberals accused me of, but that's because they have difficulty understanding words. The reason I use the word eradicate there is because I specifically was referring to uprooting an entire ideology, root and branch. And the reason I use gay specifically in this case is one, because it's kind of funny and we've all used it, even though we all politically correctly now pretend that we don't. We're all clutching our pearls. But the other thing, we all pretend that the homosexuals are offended by it. They're not. Homosexuals are outrageous people a lot of the time, and they're men a lot of the time, and they're tough guys. It's like macho man in the Village People. The reason I'm using it specifically here is because gay refers to an entire view of the sexual ethic. A view of the sexual ethic that views men and women as indiscernible and substitutable for one another, and a view of the sexual ethic that is ultimately sterile, that separates means from ends. And so I'm doing that very intentionally.
You're
I'm doing
using the esoteric way, right?
I don't think that's so esoteric. I think it's playing on the proper meaning of the word, and it's showing people the issue from a perspective that has been kept from them.
But when you just say,
I'm just going to put it out there that anyone who is quote unquote alienated by hearing someone use a word like the word gay or, any other word that they don't like that hurts their feelings, if they're just going to use that as an excuse to not, listen to the rest of what the person has to say when they're speaking on something that is true, then let's be honest, they were never going to put in the work to find the truth in the first place. So, why are we wasting our time trying to appease the people who are literally trying to nitpick and find any old excuse to not have to accept the truth? Like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I don't understand why it's now my job to, try and understand everything that offends everybody and then try and not do any of the things that offend anybody, even though it's constantly changing. And there's no way of actually predicting it.
when you just say the word gay, without any context behind it, people are not going to put that meaning the way that you meant it. They're not going to do all the background thinking of, oh, he means it like this, and if you extrapolate to this.
But when I use a word that everyone used until 5 minutes ago, that now the politically correct censors won't let us use, when I use that word, what I am saying is I will not ascribe to your left-wing censorship regime. And you're right, it might put some people off. It'll at least raise their eyebrows, even if they're not offended. I don't think many people are actually offended by it, but it'll raise their eyebrows at least at first. But the consequence of that will be that it will start to crack away at the left-wing censorship regime, which uses a cycle of euphemisms to constantly change the words that we're allowed to use for anything.
I would disagree. I think it would cause a lot of people to check out immediately. They would hear you saying something like this and immediately think, it's one of these guys. Anything he says
my speech has a lot of views on it.
Anything you say after that, then you're going to tune out or not take as seriously as saying, I disagree with the concept of marriage because of this. To me, that sounds a lot more eloquent and a lot more sophisticated than saying,
and understanding, which is, I feel like, the number one thing that you need to be if you're trying to persuade other people.
I guess my evidence to the contrary is I've given many long lectures using very dry language on all of these questions, and you've never seen any of them, and none of those clips have ever gone viral.
So then
it's a conversion rate.
It's
on those.
not merely for attention. It's so that
your message
important
gets heard.
point is heard by people in a precise and just way.
Yeah, that's what I never understood about the people that argued these points of like, well, okay, we agree with you that what you're saying is true, but we want you to just say it in like a different way without using that word that you're using to describe it. When it's like, well, but why would I use 5 words to describe something when I could use 1 word, because that 1 word has the definition of those 5 words that I would need to describe that thing with, that I could just use the 1 word for, that you don't want me to use. Why is it just because you're offended by the word that you now want me to just say the definition of the word rather than just saying the word? Symbolically speaking, saying the definition of a word and saying a word are symbolically the same.
But then I think it's also, do you want your message to be heard, or do you want it to impact the people in a positive way that you would like to get your message across? Because getting attention and just saying crazy stuff will get crazy attention
I don't think
online.
I'm saying any crazy stuff. I think
But
I'm
I'm
saying
just-
very reasonable, true stuff.
But just taking to the extreme and saying, I'm going to say something that'll get attention, that will do well on social media, versus I'm going to say something, it's not going to get as much attention, but the people who watch it will take my ideas into consideration. It'll make more of an impact than saying something.
I think
just gets.
I think that my CPAC speech dominated the national discourse for at least a week after I gave it. And it wasn't exclusively my CPAC speech. It was Matt Walsh's What is a Woman movie. It was the work of TERF radical feminists but I'm really not taking credit for all of this. But I do think that my speech at CPAC and the positive way that it was received by the American right and a lot of the American middle, and the screeching, crazy reaction that came from the left and the lies that came from the establishment media, helped to expand the window of discourse and helped to move that issue more in our direction. And it's led to laws that have been proscribing the transgender ideology in public life. So I think it was very persuasive. And it did get people's attention. It did. I actually didn't intend for it to get that much attention, but it did. And I think that's a good thing. And yes, the libs are going to accuse me of all sorts of things, genocide or whatever. But it's ridiculous, and reasonable people know that's ridiculous. Just as when I say that, a guy saying that my wife gets to run the whole show at home and I don't have a say, so that's kind of gay, man. I don't think that homosexuals at home are saying that awful, terrible man, he wants to throw me off a roof like the Taliban. No, they're saying, okay, he's using a word that we don't use as much in the last 5 years, but a lot of people have used for a long time. And he's using it in a derogatory way because he's criticizing an action of a husband with his wife. And he's using it in a precise way because he's saying that that view of sexual relations is essentially the same view as the gay view, which is that men and women are basically the same. So I think it operates on a lot of levels. And the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. I'm happy to give a really dry academic lecture, but that message is not going to penetrate. To some people it will. I'll give it in I'm giving a lecture on Dante this coming summer. I can't wait to do it. It's going to be extremely academic, very dry. A lot of people will consider it boring, probably. The people in the room will love it.
Yeah, this argument absolutely makes no sense at all whatsoever, because he's basically saying for the people that hear your message, for them to truly understand it or to accept it, you need to basically make sure that less people hear it by making it less clickbaity or less, shocking. But that's the whole point of the internet. Is how everything works on the internet. If you don't make it shocking, people don't click on it. That's just how it works. And he's basically saying, well, you should sacrifice the reach of your message in the hopes that it will, please this 1 max 2% of the viewers that will be supposedly offended by a word that he said, but not be offended by him saying the definition of the word, which makes no sense at all. Because it's well, if the word's offensive, then the definition of the word should also be offensive, because that's what the word is describing, is the definition of the word. Just logical gymnastics going on here. And what Mr. Knowles said in this last clip is exactly the point, because it's people like to try and act like things are more complicated than they actually are, but the truth is really quite simple when you break it down. It literally is black and white, true or false. It's just the truth. That's how it is. It's a binary system. And the truth of the matter is there's really only two perspectives of looking at it. There's really the traditional perspective, and then there's the radical perspective. And there really isn't anything in between the two, because the traditional perspective is saying, yeah, men and women are different and not equal. Meanwhile, you have the radicals who come in and say that men and women are the same, and you can just change your opinion and become a girl the next day. And the reason I say that there's nothing in between that is because anything that is in between that eventually leads to either one of those extremes. Because while, yes, right now you might be somewhere in the middle, but given enough time, you will eventually make it to one or the other.
I tend to believe that you could spice up your message without alienating even 1 or 2% of your audience, whatever that may be, without using...
What do you mean by alienate?
I think when you say the term, that's gay. I think the people who would be really receptive to you and want to hear what you have to say might tune you out at that point.
Why? Because they think that I disapprove of the sexual revolution?
I think
I
that
do-
you would use terms that maybe are not.
It's just an aggressive term.
It is. I'd say the
when
same
did
with
that?
the
When
term.
did it become an aggressive term?
It doesn't matter how you're transmitting it.
No,
right?
I'm just
But
asking when
matters-
it became an aggressive
how
term.
it-
I'm
but it's
saying
how
that's
it's
not even a
received.
part of this discussion. I'm saying it matters how it's received.
Well, all right, but I got to get an answer to this question. You're saying it's an aggressive term. That's very shocking for me to hear. For
Right,
my
it
whole
be-
life, that wasn't an aggressive term.
Right, but
so
now
when
it
did
is.
When did it become an aggressive term?
Probably in the last couple of years.
Exactly. Exactly. So what are we going to do? Are we going to accept the radical redefinition of basic words by the left and just play along with their words? And what, pretty soon I'm going to start calling Bruce Jenner she or Caitlyn. And then I've accepted transgenderism. Because here's the point. When you use the language framed by your ideological adversaries, you accept their whole premise. When you start talking about the right to marriage equality rather than the meaning of marriage, there's no debate to be had. You've already accepted that two men can marry one another just as a man and a woman can marry one another. You've already accepted that. You're just asking who has the right to do it. You've lost the debate. The moment that you call Bruce Jenner Caitlyn, that's a girl's name, or if you call Bruce Jenner she, especially, you've accepted the premise of transgenderism. And you're right. If I call Bruce Jenner he, people are going to recoil at that. I'm going to alienate 1% of the audience by saying that because I'm not supposed to call him Bruce. I'm not supposed to call him him. I guess I'll alienate some radicals, but I will show the vast majority of the audience the reality as I see it, which I think is
So that's
correct.
what I've been trying to understand this whole time, is that if you're optimizing for impact, you think that your route would be more impactful than maybe the other
You're
route.
giving me way too much credit. You're making me out to be some big strategist calculator of every piece of rhetoric I use. It's not that complex. I just endeavor to tell the truth. I endeavor to speak the truth, and I endeavor to speak the truth in really plain terms. I'm with George Orwell on this. Politics in the English language. We should use simple terms. We should use Saxon words over Latinate words when we can. We should use terms that are vivid, and I guess we call that aggressive. But George Orwell would say it's plain. It's clear. It presents to people reality, because if we don't use that, if we just use the euphemisms and the mealy-mouthed politically correct words, then people are going to continue to see a fantasy. If we talk about an illegal alien, then we know that's the kind of person who has no right to be in the country. If we talk about an undocumented future American dreamer, well, that paints a picture for you, whether you're aware of it or not, of someone who has absolutely every right to be in the country, probably more than you do. If we talk about she, the trans woman, well, she has every right to go into that bathroom. She's a she. If we say it's a he and he's a dude and he's wearing a dress and that man has no right to go into the bathroom. The clarity here in language, you might call it aggressive. I think it's the only option.
What really grinds my gears is, why do people think that just because all of a sudden everyone decided, like very recently, that these words mean completely different things than what they actually mean, that all of a sudden everyone needs to act like they meant these things this whole time and no one can use these old bad words anymore? But it's like, that's fine if you want to believe that, but all the rest of us normal people over here are just going to keep using the word gay. And secondly, to their point of it's how the term is received. It's not about how you're transmitting it. Well, you know what I don't have control over as the person who is giving the message? How someone else perceives me, because I have no control over somebody else's perception. The only thing that I can control that could possibly affect their perception of me would be my actions. Yes, and exactly, Mr. Knowles, that is exactly why I refuse to lie. Because lying is like a drug, an addictive drug, in the sense of if you allow yourself to do it and you get away with it, you're going to get a bit of a dopamine hit because you're like, I'm so smart, or I'm so good at lying, I got away with it. Well, given enough exposure to that type of behavior, you will eventually get addicted to that behavior, just like you get addicted to any addictive drug or any other type of addictive behavior. And the reason you shouldn't even allow yourself to do it once is because lying literally warps your perception of reality. And if you want to understand what is the actual truth, like you are actually actively searching for the truth, well, the first thing you have to do is to stop lying and to actively make sure that you do not say things that you know to be untrue. Now, obviously, if you lie unintentionally because you didn't know better at the time, you thought you were telling the truth, but you weren't, That's not what this is about. This is about not saying things you know to be untrue and not allowing yourself to speak these things.
I'm not saying that I personally find that aggressive. I'm saying in the way that it's received and digested in the people that are.
This is the key. You think the language is just fine. You probably think
I'm
the
not
language is
labeling it either way.
You just said you don't think it's aggressive.
I said I'm not
prefer. I'd probably be
labeling,
more
but
against
it's at least
it,
not
but-
aggressive. Or you think it is aggressive.
I think it
Or you're just
it
not
is
willing
what
to
the
say.
impact is, probably.
No, I'm asking what you think, man.
What
I'm
do
not
I
asking-
think if someone told me that, no, I wouldn't be, super sensitive to it.
And I think basically everyone is like you. And I think that we're all just afraid of offending some hypothetical third party that doesn't really exist. And I think that is how the left controls the whole dialogue, because we're all normal guys. And everyone you talk to, even if they say, I'm a gay guy, or I'm a this thing, or I'm a that thing, or whatever. I don't know what language they're supposed to use now, but very few people actually get offended by any of this stuff. It is the fear, the hypothetical fear of offending the other that keeps us all trapped in this linguistic prison, living in a web of lies, rather than just speaking the truth clearly, truth that we can all basically perceive.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the
Really
Iced Coffee Hour.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much to the Daily Wire, and thank you so much to the production crew that said.
Yeah, man, exactly, Mr. Knowles. It's exactly it. Facts don't care about your feelings, and I shouldn't have to tiptoe and walk on eggshells when speaking about the facts around you because it's going to hurt your feelings. Well, guess what? That's not a me problem. That's a you problem. You need to work on that, not me. I don't need to change my language to not offend you and your inability to hear the truth. Some people need to take some self-accountability for their emotions and realize that emotions are not real. And the reason I say that is because emotions have no bearing on reality. Emotions exist only in your mind. They have no bearing on reality because they don't exist outside of your mind unless you act on them, just like your thoughts. Your thoughts are not real unless you act on them. And that's why people need to realize that your emotions are not real unless you act on them. So if you choose to not act on your emotions, then you are not being controlled by your emotions. And really, what I think the issue just comes down to is just there's just too many people out here that lack actual emotional regulation skills. They have absolutely no idea how to regulate their own emotions, and this is why they require it upon the people in their environment to bend over backwards to their every whim, because if they don't, then they will emotionally lose it. And then, thus ensues a screaming, crying person yelling about something. But yeah, that's just what I think. Do you guys think that we should all stop using the word gay because some people get offended? Or do you think like Mr. Knowles and think that we should keep using the word gay and that the shock value that it has on society is like dropping someone into an ice bath of truth? What's your opinion? Why don't you hop down in the comments and let me know down below? And while you're down there, make sure you leave a like on this video, subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to follow me on Rumble as well.